Okay, Sailor Bob, so why people suffer?
They suffer because they've got a false idea or image of what they believe themselves to be. And a little bit of investigating and seeing for themselves which is the word, the thing, is the concept, the word or idea that they have about themselves, is that what they really are? All of us, you, me, everybody else, we start off with the belief that we are a person, an individual, a separate entity. Parents, schools and everybody else has reinforced that, put that belief on us, and we believe it ourselves and reinforce it. Down through the ages, there are so-called saints, saviours and seers that have seen through it and pointed out that there is no individual person, there's no separate entity. It's all the great scriptures have been written about. It's the one essence, patterning, shaping, forming, and expressing as everything. Even to call it an essence is just a label we put on. It's all vibrating intelligence, energy, or essence. It's patterning, shaping, and forming all this manifestation. That's in Hinduism, they put it on nama rupa, name and form. The name is the label that we put upon it, and the form is pattern, shape, and we're putting it in like person, body, mind, and all this are shapes and forms. The trees are shape and form. Cloud and everything else are shapes and forms, pattern.
So, and then why do we think we are the shape or form?
Because we've been told when we learnt words, reasoning started about the capacity of 2, 2.5. We've taken ourselves to be this name or this label we put upon ourselves. And we've never investigated and seen that it's false.
But it feels like when I have the body, you know, I can see only through my pair of eyes. I can only feel my pain.
Yeah. But who is the one that's feeling it? Is it a separate entity, an individual? Or is it just a sensation there that we've labelled like we've labelled everything else, me and mine? That's the two great concepts that are our problem, me and mine. Me and mine. If we think there's a me, it's got to take on board some concept or idea, this is mine. I tell you that me and mine are the two concepts that cause this problem.
But why can I know only sensations through one body and one set of eyes? Why cannot I know all the sensations through every body and every eyes?
Well, each pattern is a unique expression. It's all the one essence's expression through each and every pattern. And the expressions of the myriads of different ways in this manifestation. As the tree, as the flower, and everything else. The tree doesn't know I'm a tree, and the flower doesn't know I'm a flower. We have the capacity of reasoning, the ability to reason, which is a very useful capacity, but it's self-destructive because it's a vibration of energy. It must vibrate dualistically. It must bring the good, there must come the bad. With the pleasure must come the pain. With the happiness comes the sadness. So how can it know itself if it is still the one essence, which is not to being discriminated? What can you say about anything at all then? And would it appear, what would the use of the so-called appearance be, if it wasn't discriminated? It'd still be the no-thingness, the silence, the stillness, the emptiness, which it already and always is. But to know itself or express itself, it's got to vibrate into different patterns, shapes and forms. And the Buddha told you that emptiness is form. It is these emptinesses patterning into all these forms. And he says the form can be nothing other than that emptiness. And we've taken on board the shapes and forms to be what we actually are.
But how can I experience myself as formless?
Well, you can't, because that which is trying to express itself as formless is the form. It's trying to experience itself as the form. But the resonation, the real actuality of knowing when you look into it. So that what the Buddha says, emptiness is form, and the form can be nothing other than the emptiness. When you investigate this form and have a look and see how substantial and solid it really is. Take the body. Are you the body? Innately you know they're not the body because you say my body. Just the same as you say my coat, my house, my car. Are you the coat? Are you the house? Are you the car? You know you're not that. And maybe you're not the body either.
So what am I?
You are that one essence, if you like to call it that. It's vibrating into the different pattern shapes and forms and expressing through it with the concepts, words and ideas, which the human form has the capacity of reasoning, which is more developed than what it is in other animals, birds and stuff. And with that capacity it's learnt words, labels. And we put all labels, or names and forms on that which is unlabelable and unformable. Emptiness.
So I am that emptiness, and I put label on myself and on everything else?
And it's all appearance, it's all seemingly so. All that emptiness is vibrating in the pattern shapes and forms. And the emptiness of the form can be nothing but the emptiness, but it appears or seems to be real. And it's a phenomenal manifestation, as they tell you. And your definition of phenomenal is that which appears to be. Pointing out that the phenomenal, the pattern shapes are only appearing, seemingly being so. The shape and form is taken to be real by the conceptual imaging that's going on, the concepts that are going on coming from that seeming persona, a mask of concepts we're put away to. A mask of concepts we're put away to. A mask of concepts, a mask of concepts we're put away to. A mask of concepts we're put away to.
Are you experiencing yourself as the emptiness in the mask of form? Or are you experiencing the form but you know that it's not real?
Well, the knowing and experiencing, everything takes place in the knowing and experiencing. But I am knowing. I'm not the pattern shape, I am the emptiness. Seemingly appearing as something. But investigating the thing, the concept, or is it all the concepts are a word or a label. What was I before I learnt words, and what were you before you learnt words? Can you remember your birth? Can you say you were born? You can't actually remember your birth because you had no words then. You hadn't learnt any words or any concepts. And learnt any language. And there was no image to relate it to. So whatever was appearing, sensations and feelings, a little baby. So see, they're all happening spontaneously. They're coming and going. But he's not fixating on anything for very long. Something else will turn up and take his focus of attention away from what's seemingly going on. He's got no labels put on. He sees another patient form, which he's more attracted to and likes it much better than the one that's going on.
But if I realize myself as emptiness, will I not lose the interest of maintaining my personal life? Will I not stop loving my husband, for example?
Why? Why would you? Because that's the way it's expressing. What brought your husband, what attracted you and brought the two of you together? Was it a different way, not just a natural way of expressing again? The one seemingly becomes two. The two becomes the many. It's never moved away from its oneness. It's always that oneness. When you learnt words, you're taken on the belief that you were something other than the emptiness, the pure spontaneous functioning. You became a separate entity. You noticed the thought, I or me, which is the primary thought. Thinking is happening. When you learn words, thinking is happening, seeing is happening, what is happening. And you say, I think, I feel, I see, I experience. You formed a subject out of the words. And what you see here and then, I see this or that, or whatever it is, the concept you have on that becomes the object. And seeing has been divided. And can there be a subject, a seer, without seeing? And can there be the object, the scene, the chair, the table, or whatever you see, without seeing? It can't be. It's all take place in the seeing, which is a natural, spontaneous function. The hearing, the tasting, the touching, the smelling, the feeling. They're the actuality. The ing on it gives us something that's really happening in the moment. But it has no substance to it or no independent nature. Because it's spontaneous, there's no duration to it. And we seemingly fixated on it and keep it there longer than it should. When you look at time, when does time begin? And you try to grasp it from this moment, you say, well, it's beginning right now. And as you're saying that, it's already ending, isn't it? And as you're saying it's already ending, it's beginning again. And it's ending again. So it's really got no any duration to it whatsoever. And when we fix onto one part, oh, I'm seeing this, we give it seeming duration. And whenever we're saying it, seeming lasting, and the concept of time becomes duration, lasting more than the spontaneity. If you ask yourself, is there a past if I don't think about it? What can you say without a thought? You say there's a future without a thought. And when's the past and future happening? When it's being realised. Have you moved away from this present moment? Can you live in the past? Go back and try and live yesterday. See for yourself. Try and live tomorrow. You can't. Trying to live in the past, you can imagine and anticipate or remember what you did yesterday or 5 minutes ago. But you can't go back and actually live in it. And what you're imagining and anticipating is taking place right in this immediacy. So you're not going back to the past at all. You're only remembering some past memory. In the future, you can't anticipate or imagine what you're going to do tomorrow. You can anticipate the future, but you can't live a moment. And if you're not anticipating and thinking about what you're going to live in the future, what you're going to do, where is it? So it's still in this immediacy.
So where is it? Where is the past? Where is the future? Where is it?
Well, there's a remembrance of it. And you can recall the past, and the only activity you're giving is recalling it in this moment. Because if you're not recalling it in this moment, can you remember what you did in the past? What you said a moment ago, or what you thought a moment ago, or what you did a moment ago? Unless you recall, you can't. And can you anticipate? You can anticipate and imagine what you're going into the future, but is it the actual? It's only an anticipating and imagining idea or concept, which you seem in a future time. But you've never moved away from this immediacy, only conceptually, only with the concepts or ideas that are going on in your mind.
The time is only conceptual, it's only in the mind.
Yeah. That's what we're going to need and understand. All your past events and experiences and conditioning are now dead images because they're past. What conditioning is there right in this moment if you're not thinking about it? What past is there in this moment if you're not thinking about it? So it's all thought-based. What future is there if you're not anticipating the measure right here?
But if I'm not thinking, I still have personality.
Have you? Is it, how real is it? Or is it a spontaneous functioning, which you put in the label personality? Where did the word person come from? In ancient languages, persona, the mask. So the personality is a mask of concepts that we believed when we learnt words from our parents. 2 years, whatever it was, 2.5 before you learnt reading, you had no person. There was no person there. It was just a spontaneous going on because you couldn't translate it into words because you hadn't learnt any words. You couldn't reason it out because the capacity of reasoning hadn't developed. It doesn't develop until you're about 2.5, and that capacity of reasoning develops, which is a capacity more developed in humans than what it is in other animals, birds, insects. But they have different capacities developed, like a bird can see better than we can. It can fly, we can't do those things naturally. But through the capacity of reasoning, we've learned to build ourselves eyeglasses and binoculars and telescopes which enable us to see better. We've learned to build ourselves plane, helicopters and balloons and things that enable us to fly. The dog has the capacity of smelling. We can't smell all the things that are on. What are the sensations that are going on? We can form sensations, concepts about them, but a lot of the sensations, other animals, birds, insects can sense them better than what we can. But we've taken on the belief that we are this separate entity, this individual, without investigating or questioning it.
Yeah, so you're talking about different capacities as if we humans weren't superior.
Well, in the no things, in the pure essence or intelligence energy, whatever you are, the basic space of non-conceptual basic space of awareness or pure intelligence or whatever label you like to put on it. Who's ever superior to you without a concept? Who's inferior to you without a concept? Because you've got this concept about yourself and you've got the concept about them and you're relating to those concepts, what you think about yourself as compared to what they are. You can either think yourself superior or inferior. But who's superior or inferior to you without a concept? If it's all that emptiness, the cognising emptiness, suffused with that knowing or intelligence, who can ever be superior to you or inferior to you? And what would you want of the other person without having this concept? You think they've got something I have, or you think I've got something they haven't got, and so I am superior to what they are. They've got something that what I have, they're superior to me. Without that concept, where does it leave you? In that equilibrium, the non-conceptual awareness, which you're told again in the scriptures, the basic space or the great perfection is non-conceptual awareness. Awareness without any concept. Or the absolute, the great perfection. What can you add to the absolute? Not a concept or a thing at all, because it wouldn't be absolute. Absolute if you can't have anything to it. What can you take away from it? Nothing at all. It wouldn't be absolute if you could. The same with the great perfection. You can't add anything to it. It wouldn't be perfect. You can't take anything away from it. It wouldn't be perfect. You are that. You are that. Don't forget. We have the capacity of reasoning. Utilising that capacity, we investigate and have a look. Am I this body? Am I this separate entity? Am I this individual? And under the investigation, it falls apart. So it can't stand the false. Anything that's false is not true. But we've believed in without questioning. If you believe in it, if it's not true, it'll fall apart under the investigation. The false cannot stand up to the investigation.
But how do I investigate that?
Well, ask yourself, who or what is this I or me? Am I the body? Am I the mind? Am I the person? Am I the persona, this conceptual image? When we see you pointing out that the persona is a mask, a conceptual image. Am I a conceptual image? If I'm a conceptual image, what would happen when I went to sleep? When I get up and give up all that imagining, it would be the end of me, but it's not, because I wake up in the morning.
So who wakes up in the morning?
Well, it dawns on you that the seeing, hearing,
Tasting, touching, smelling.
and it all appear in that moment of sleep. It dawns on you that sleeping is over. The reasoning starts again. And the conceptualising starts along with it. And so there's nobody that wakes up. It's just awareness, or the existence, which is seemingly obscured. The consciousness becomes utterly aware that it exists. You don't recognise your existence while you're in deep sleep. You can't say I exist without a concept.
So the individual or the ego who is on the quest to wake up, that one doesn't wake up?
No, but it dawns on that so-called individual. Well, I'm not this entity that I believe myself to be. There is an awakening or a dawning to it. A recognising, well, I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, I'm not this concept, I'm not this individual. I am utterly aware, or totally aware of being or existing. I am that existence itself. I am that awareness itself. Their labels are put on, but not even those labels.
So is the existence waking up or awareness waking up?
It's a recognition that the believed in entity that we've taken to be real was never real at all. Dawning that I've been looking in the wrong direction. I've been taking all these concepts on board and believing on them, but being reinforced by my parents, school, society and everybody else. The energy of belief has gone into them, making them real, and the belief is seen true. Can you believe in something when it's seen true? You see it's false. You can't say there's a natural dawning. There can't be that belief. And your dictionary definition tells you that the belief is not the actual. Definition of belief is an unquestioned acceptance of something in the absence of reason. It can't be reasoned out. Acceptance of an alleged fact without positive knowledge or proof. And haven't we been trying to reason it out all our life and never found the answer in the mind, in the conceptual mind? It might dawn on us then, the awakening might come about. Maybe I've been looking in the wrong direction. I've been looking in the so-called thing called mind all my life and never found the answer. Maybe this answer's not there. Because when you look at that, what direction is there outside the mind? There's absolutely no direction whatsoever outside the mind. So it's all in the mind. And while I'm in the mind, the nature of the mind is to vibrate and to go on dualistically vibration like it has all along. So there's no way out. Except if it starts to dawn on me it's the wrong direction, what am I going to do? I'm going to see what way there is outside of the mind. And I might pause a thought or try and see what's there prior to the thought. And the resonation or the seeing might come about where I realise the life, I'm that life that was there prior to be thought, prior to be thinking.
But the contemplation, it still takes place in the mind through analysing concepts.
Yes, through thought. Now you couldn't utilise the thought now it's being utilised and recognised. Instead of it utilising you and telling you, as this entity you don't understand, or you've got to become realised, or liberated, or I'm not good enough, or I'm fearful. And that one essence, like the sun is shining naturally and ever by itself, it's self-shining. The daylight is self-daylight, it's night time is self-darkness. It's all that one self. This self I believe to myself to be is the one self, the one vibrating essence, patterning, shaping, forming and experiencing as everything. There's no separation or no duality whatsoever.
Okay, but can I have a glimpse of that right now?
Yes.
How do I do that?
Well, you're seeing right now, aren't you?
Yes.
And before the thought comes up, I see. Aren't you seeing before that thought comes up?
Yes.
And how is it translated in the mind? The seeing is happening, it's translated as I see, don't you? When you say I see, what are you doing? You added all these concepts on it, the conceptual image you've got about yourself. It's me, Cat, that thinks it's now seeing, the conceptual image. And what Cat sees is seeing this video or whatever the questions and everything going on. Cat has become the subject. The thought you've got, the conceptual image about yourself, Cat, becomes the subject. And what you're seeing has become the object because you put labels and shapes and forms on it. But can the thought I see actually see? Can a thought see?
Nope.
Can a thought hear?
Nope.
Can a thought be aware?
No.
So this conceptual image, when you investigate, you realise it can't see, can't hear, can't be aware. It's never done anything. You've got to choose it, can't. But it's the seeing is happening, the hearing is happening, the tasting, touching, smelling, all the functions happening. If it's not translated with a thought and divided into subject-object, It's just a pure, spontaneous happening, occurring naturally and effortlessly. Just like the earth is rolling around the sun. Is the earth saying, I'm rolling around the sun? And the sun's saying, now it's dark, now it's daylight. The sun doesn't know anything about that, and neither does the earth. When the earth, where we are now, in this part of the earth faces away, faces toward the sun, it's daylight, and we're seeing by the daylight. When it rolls around the other side, it's dark, and you've got the darkness. But the darkness doesn't know anything about the light doesn't know anything about the darkness. So the two aspects of the one thing, which vibrates to the opposites. And the same with the sun. The sun doesn't stop shining, it's always never shining. It seemingly gets obscured by clouds. It doesn't. It's always and ever fresh. Just like that essence as you are, never gets obscured by any of the thoughts, feelings, emotions that appear in it. They come and they go. While ever the naming goes on, the labelling, which is thought, you've got to lose sight of it. Now then the reasoning capacity comes very useful. But because we're related to the other, it divides in the opposites always, the opposites can come up. And it can be seemingly good and bad. But I use the terminology like there's no one-ended stick. Each stick's got two ends to it. So the good end might be the round, smooth end you can hang on to, and the bad end might be the natural thinning you can break or snap it out. But you see, there's still the one stick. So when the bad appears, consistently, we don't like the bad, we try to get rid of it. Not realising of itself it's going to change, and the good end doesn't stay around, no matter how much you want to keep it there. It's going to change in the opposite, just like in nature. It's constantly vibrating in the opposites. It's not going to be summer all the time. It's not going to be winter all the time. It's not going to be a spring and autumn all the time. It's constantly transit, constantly changing. It's not going to be daylight all the time, or darkness.
So what you're saying, are you saying that you still have negative emotions or thoughts at times?
Yes. The thought is a vibration, and it can only vibrate dualistically. And look at how your mind functions. Isn't it good and bad? The so-called good is the positive, the bad is the negative. Isn't it happy or sad? The happiness is supposed to be the good, the sadness is the negative. Is it pleasant and painful? The pleasantness is the good, the painful is the negative. See your mind and see what's always functioning dualistically, positive, negative, good and bad, happy, sad, loving, hating. Can't function any other way. Where's the centre? Where's the middle to it? It's either negative or positive. Well, I can use the analogy of going to the South Pole. How much further south can you go? Can't go, next step would be north, wouldn't it? If you want still on the earth, go to the North Pole, how much further north can you go? Next step would be south. Now where do they meet? And you're told in nature and you realise they must come back to where they're equal. And don't they call that the equator? So when it becomes that equilibrium in ourselves, when we're not functioning in the opposites, in that equilibrium, what good and bad can there be? And they seemingly come up, but they're not believed in anymore, or taken for granted anymore, and they will naturally move on by themselves. And they will naturally move on by themselves. Well, the mind, what mind is there prior to thought? Did you know there was a mind there when you were in the womb? Or the first couple of years of your life? You didn't realise you were anything there until that capacity of reasoning developed. And you need an implement to that reasoning to express through. The energy goes through the brain, or whatever organs you put in there. We give them some priority and things that they're doing, but they couldn't be there without the life essence. And the labels were words. You couldn't have learnt a word without that reasoning there. Every word we've ever spoken or ever likely to speak has been learnt. And being learnt means it's been acquired. We weren't born with it, we picked it up along the way. And immediately we picked it up because it's reinforced by everybody around us, our parents, and we don't question it ourselves at that age. We take the belief in it, we think we are the word. I'm Bob, the Australian, the good one, whatever label I got on myself. Without questioning, we take the belief goes in it, we take it to be real.
So we think we are the Word,
Yes.
and this is all because of learning language?
Yes. Well, look at the Bible. What does it tell you? In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. That's all God. We put a label on this, we think in front of the show. And the Word, nothing was made without the Word, without this Word God we believe in. All things were made by Him, by the Word. There was nothing made that was made without the Word. And the Word was made, it's manifest and appeared amongst us. So we're only the Word.
So we actually created the whole world by naming it?
Yeah.
Like in the Bible, Adam and Eve, they were given a task to label the creation?
They ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. What is the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Isn't it words?
Yeah.
The so-called ate, they put the apple on it and give it, that's an analogy, it points it out, it's a good one too. They were in paradise without the Word. No good, no bad, no serpent, all these things might have been there, but there was no doubt or question or argument about them. You know, they're all pattern, shapes and form. But they ate of the tree of knowledge, they learnt words. And then they say, who told you you were separate? Who told you?
Yeah.
They learnt the words, aren't
But if I don't call my headache bad, doesn't it hurt?
they? It will hurt, probably. But where did the label hurt come from? The little label we put on it. And if you're not putting that label on it, it's just another sensation. All our feelings and emotions are sensations, which we put labels on. And we relate to the past feeling or emotion, we relate it to the Word. If we're not labeling this fresh and new sensation that comes up, we're not putting a past label on it. What is it? Go to it and see, whatever this feeling is. As soon as we put the old label on it, we're loading ourselves with all the past feelings and sensation we've had, and it becomes overwhelming. But if you're seeing this, it's coming up fresh and new, and knowing for certain, without the label on it, and not fixating on it, it's going to move on like everything else moves on, and unless it's kept there by a concept, it's going to move on, it's going to change. And look at all the sensations you've had in your life. We've hung on to some a lot longer than we should have, and we've beaten ourselves on it with a conditioned word and suffered accordingly. But sooner or later it's moved on, and another one comes up and you equate it to the old one and get locked into it again. But what lasts in nature without putting a concept of time on it? Everything is spontaneous, constantly changing, which it tells you the manifestation is transient. Nothing static about it. It's constantly changing. And that change, it's life itself moving on. And it's only life. That's all there is. And the Sakata tells us that there is only life, there is nobody who lives the life. So you and I and everybody else who thinks we're living a life, it's not doing it. Life is living ourselves. And take that life essence out of the body and see. What have you got? You've got a corpse. The corpse has got eyes, ears, heart, lungs, voice, throat, and all the voice box and throat and all these organs. But without that life essence going through, it's just like a computer. The computer's got a wonderful lot of information in it. But if the power is not turned on, what can you get out of it? Nothing. If that life essence is not in that body, what have you got? You've got a corpse, which is going to break down through that patterning intelligence in it that it is. You're not going to leave it hanging around. It's going to rot it. Form enzymes are going to rot it and break it down. So it goes back into the life essence again as it breaks down into minerals and go into the earth. The earth might have a seed in it which needs those minerals and a bit of water to form and it'll sprout it, or something will happen, or the water will go into the ocean and you won't get the same drop of water out of it again. The life continues to live on life.
So the corpse is that same life essence also? Even if it's dead?
Yes. What happens? It stops integrating, it stops keeping that shape and form going, but it vibrates in the opposite. It's being a vibrating opposite. In that vibrating into the opposite, it forms enzymes. And those enzymes, which are life essence, start to rot it. They start to eat it, rot it and break it down. Until what's left, it might be only minerals and bones, whatever, which will go into the earth and there'll be something waiting there. Reutilisation.
what is blowing the wind?
A vibration, a movement of energy. A stirring and a movement. Which is what's it appearing in? Taken out of space? Can it appear outside of space, outside of emptiness?
So is the same thing blowing the wind, creating the body and killing the body and
All
disintegrating the body?
All the vibration, movement. It's not a pure movement. It has a beginning and an end. It's a spontaneous emanation, which is beginningless and endless. As it's beginning, it's already ending. As it's already ending, it's always beginning. There's no static point to it whatsoever. As you're told again in the scriptures, there's no static point to anything. And there's no self-nature to it. It's all spontaneous emanation. Vibrating into different shapes and forms, which appear solid and substantial. But put it all under a microscope and break it down. See how solid it really is. Put that body under a microscope and see how solid it is. There are lots of gaps, there's lots of space in it. What can you do with that space? With that emptiness? And the Buddha told you that it's a cognizing emptiness. It's that emptiness itself that's suffused with cognizing. Another term for cognizing is knowing. And you are knowing right now, isn't that a fact?
Yeah.
You can't negate your knowingness or your beingness. Seeing, knowing and loving to be. That's Satchitananda. That's the Buddhists tell you it's a cognizing emptiness, and the Hindus tell you it's Satchitananda, which is the same. It's bliss, being, knowing, aware, loving to be. That's the same thing in different concepts. And others will tell you it's the absolute, which is the same thing. The absolute is perfect, great perfection. It's been told there, we don't see it. We've followed our fathers and our parents' footsteps, which we've taught us words, and we've taken the word to be real.
But how can I glimpse that pure being? The mind seems to constantly be busy and entertain me with different distractions and thoughts.
Yeah. But if you try and look beyond the word, what's a word? Nothing but a thought, isn't it?
Mm.
What's a thought? Can you grasp a thought?
No.
What would you be trying to grasp it with?
Another thought?
Another thought. Thought's trying to grasp a thought. So if you say I can't grasp it with a thought, what's going to be? There's going to be a bit of a hiatus there in that moment.
Mm.
In that hiatus, have you disappeared?
No.
Have you fallen apart?
No.
Is it the end of you?
Mm.
All that's happened is thought has paused for a moment, but life is still expression. You're still breathing without thinking about it. Your heart's still beating. Food's being digested. Hair and fingernails are growing. Food's being digested. All these things are happening without the thought, without the word. So I saw the livingness is going on. And see the word and realise the word is not the thing. In the beginning was the word. You didn't begin till you learned words. And the words, every word you've ever spoken has been learned. And the word's not the thing, it's not the real. Take the word water. Drink the word if you can. Swim in the word. Drown in the word. You can't. Does the word fire burn your mouth? You can't heat yourself in the word, it doesn't burn your mouth. Cook with the word. You can't. So the word's not the thing. So when you look at this word, I or me, which you've taken yourself to be, and believed in it, the word is not the thing, the words are going to lose their hold over you. They can be utilised and developed with the capacity of reasoning, but you're not going to beat yourself up as a separate entity or the individual with something that is not real.
But it's just more than one word, you know. It's sensitivity, emotionality, vulnerability, all the past. It's 1,000 words to constitute the image.
But they're all labels you put on. What did you say it was? The potential or the functioning. That's there in its purity, without the word. You're seeing. At times you recognise you're seeing without the label I see. You're hearing without the label I hear. You're thinking without the label I think. All these things that are there, we put labels on. Without the word, a lot of it is still going on. And the sensation of fear is a word you put on, a label you put on. See it as a fresh and new sensation. And instead of putting the old label on, which we load ourselves to, you might see, wow, this is a fresh and new sensation. It's never really been expressed before. But it feels like the fear that I've had before. But am I going to label that if I know it's fresh and new? I'm not. It gives love and hate. You know, I love this, but I hate that. Am I going to continue to hate something that I'm putting onto a fresh and new sensation? I'm going to put the old label of what she did to me last week or last year, and you know, I love her, now I hate the bitch. See her fresh and new and see it fresh and new. So it's not going to be, that conditioned belief is not going to go into it anymore. And that's the liberation. What are you free from? You're free from the bondage of self. That's the only bondage you ever have. And what is the bondage of self? Believing it is myself. Instead of saying it's the one self, we put the personal on. When we say it's the self, it's myself, it's me. Me is that myself. And the me is a concept, which is not real, which is not real, which is not real. Well, if you ask yourself, who is this happening to? We believe that this is entity, and you've got to try and see if this entity you believe yourself to be is real or not. Well, something comes up, and you say, who is this happening to? The obvious answer is happening to me, Bob, self-centered, the image. And you ask yourself, who is this me? What have you got to do? And you realise you can't find the answer in the mind because you've looked for years in the mind, and the nature of the mind is vibrates, it continues to go on. What way is there out of the mind? You've looked in the mind all your life, and you start to realise now that the answer's not there because it keeps going on and on. What way am I going to look and realise every way you looked has always been, what way is there out of the mind? And then it might just dawn you, the only way out of the mind is full stop. Pause. Don't go on, don't go wrong, don't go there. What can you say without the mind? What can you say with a pause? Can you say that there's anything there? You know, can only vaguely pause it for a moment, the chatter will start again. But in that basic pause, the stopping for a moment or two, you'll realise you didn't stop seeing, you didn't stop hearing, you didn't stop breathing. The functioning, the life essence was going on, but thought had stopped. And every night when you go to sleep, what happens? You give up that thought, I am, every night. If you were that thought, you'd know you're not that. You wouldn't lose sight of it. But you're glad to give it up every night when you go to sleep. You go to sleep without a qualm. You don't want to go to sleep. So you know you're not that thought. And then you get the taste of it. What's wrong with right now if I don't think about it?
I'll say it again because the car was passing.
So what's wrong with right now if I don't think about it? And again, go back, see what's there without a thought. You try and look beyond the thought. And you say, I'm looking without a thought. And then that's another thought. So you drop that. What's next? I'm dropping it. That's a thought.
Yeah.
Oh, shit, I'll let it all go. And that's a thought. But all of a sudden you might let go. Realise you're trying to grasp with the concept of a thought, but always bring another thought. But you get the chance to see, without the thought, this little gap there, then that little gap will get longer and longer. And thoughts will continue to come up. But you've seen through it when you can't believe in them again, and something that can't be believed in, the energy of your life is not keeping it there, it's going to move on. It must move on. It's transient. It's only the idea of belief that keeps them there and keep hanging around for days, weeks, sometimes for years. The conceptual image we got, the conceptual belief is still there, and we call that our condition.
And is it true that the psychological suffering drops off and you don't need to suffer psychological pain, worry and anxieties and anger anymore?
That's right. They can come up, where before they might hang around for days, weeks, because you're in conflict with them when you're relating to them, trying to get rid of it. Instead of leaving it as is. There's a fight with it, a resistance to it. And as I say, any resistance is conflict, and any conflict is uneasiness or disease. And disease is anxiety, that's fear, that's unhappiness, depression, that's all disease.
So they still show up, but before you call them suffering, they're gone?
You see it? No, they might stay there for a little while, but they'll get the more and more it's seen through, the less and less hold they're going to have on you, because you can't believe in when you see something that's false. You don't believe the earth is flat anymore. You've seen through it. You don't see the sea is blue anymore. You've seen through it. You don't see where the sea and the sky meet. It's not the end of the earth anymore. Why? It still appears to be so. The appearance will be there, but the truth about it is known. You can't believe it anymore, so it doesn't bother you for very long. You're not going to be taken in by the blue sea. When you see a cloud-covered sky in the morning, you're not going to say the sun's left the sky. You can't believe it anymore, because you know, even though you don't see the sun, you know that for certain the sun is always there. You know.
So even though you see there is a seeming individual, you know it's not true?
Yes. How can it be true when you've seen false? So if it's not true, can you fixate on it? You're going to continue to believe on it, and it must move on if it's not fixated on. And the great, you know, it's an unfixated awareness, just as it is.
Yeah.
Be utterly awake, as it says, with the five senses wide open. When you awake to those five senses, where you're seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, thinking, all the sensations are going on, and you're utterly awake to that. When we're functioning in the me, we're functioning from this self-centered belief, and we're only functioning on one of them, whatever it is, the seeing, the hearing, the tasting and the touching. Even though, when you recognise the others are going on now. Can you hear those cars going by right now?
Yeah.
You're in the background, but you're focusing on me and what I'm saying.
Yes.
You're seeing the movement of those clothes on the clothesline blowing around. You're seeing it, but we're not taking them. They're not in the background. They're all in the background, not taking notice. You see the wind, you can feel the wind on your skin.
Yes.
You're not taking any notice. So it says, be utterly awake with the five senses wide open. That means, instead of the other questions be pushed into the background, there's an equilibrium with it all. There's just as much seeing as there is hearing, as there is tasting, as there is touching, smelling. And it goes on to say, be utterly awake with the five senses wide open, and be utterly open with unfixated awareness. Where you're not fixating on one, you're going with each and every one of them as it comes up. If it's necessary to leave the seeing to what's going on in the background, you'll switch to the hearing or the movement. And see it moving away from the stillness. You see the movement is necessary, something, you'll move to that. But you're not fixating on them, and then you're where you're constantly moving around in the totality. And you are that totality, not the separate entity that's got to take this little entity, I'm going to make this entity whole and complete. I'm going to become enlightened. It might take me some time, called the concept of time. But time is duration, and there's no such thing as time.
So no hope for that individual?
Yeah, there's not. And you see that. People do that and have done it for years. But it's no difference whether they believe in it or not. The pattern's going to break, shape and form is going to break down sometime or other. But they've been trapped in a lot of so-called psychological suffering unnecessarily. So start from the fact, whether you recognise it or not this moment, that I am already that. Start from the fact of already that. Whether you know it or not, well, what can I add to that what I am? What can I add to that I am, without putting a concept on it? Then you'll be like Moses on the mountain. Moses on the mountain, he's got a few people to look after, the Jewish people he's in charge of, and they get into all sorts of trouble on the road. They said, got to do something to enable them to get out of this. And it came to him there and then, through that innate intelligence, they give him a set of rules to live by. So I put up a set of tablets of 10 Commandments. Now he says, I've got to take these back to the people and tell them. Well, what are they going to do? Tell them. Who am I going to tell them sent me? Because I'm not going to say he knows from me. And that inner voice came to him again, tell them I am sent you. I am is my name. And Moses realised, shit, I am that I am. I've always been that I am. And he realised his true nature there and then.
Shit, I am that I am.
Yeah.
Shit. What is not that I am?
Yeah.
Everything is that.
Everything is that I am, and I am this. And that's what the Subtitles tells you. He says, stay with the I amness, not with the thought. The I amness translates as that sense of presence, the knowing that you are, the actual knowing. It translates through the mind as the thought I am. And that great mantra is I am that. I am that essence, or I am that essence. It translates as a thought. But the thought or the word is not the thing.
So is it really an essence? Is it really one? Or is it empty? Or is it nothing?
Any label. It is no thing. It's always been no things. And all the pattern, shapes and forms in its manifestation are only things. Now can something come from no thing? They're all appearing in the empty space. The space is empty, it's non-conceptual. Ever fresh silence and stillness and emptiness, a cognising emptiness. Vibrates into different pattern shapes and forms, which are all things in that emptiness. Can something come from nothing? It can't. So even the pattern shapes and forms are that no thing appearing or seeming to appear as something.
So the one essence is not even one?
No. No, not even one.
It's not possible to grasp it with the mind, because mind only grasps things.
That's right. Nothing. It's the one essence, patterning, shaping, forming, appearing and expressing as everything, and you can't be possibly anything other than that. So you are not the body or mind. So when you say, I am that, don't you take the idea that you are the person. You are the totality. So that's so never move away from that. I am that essence.
But if we can't grasp it with the mind, why mind seem to be the only tool with which we are seeking?
Yeah, they're good, and it's a useful tool. The capacity of reasoning is very useful. You know, out there in the manifestation, you've got all these things. And you'll say, I built that, or I drew that picture, I made that, I did this, I wrote that book. But then again, take that life essence out of the body, and you got the mind, you got the heart, you got all the things there. But can you write a book with the mind without life essence? Can you build a house without it?
No.
Can you have a thought, feeling or emotion without it? So what did it? The personal entity did nothing. It can do nothing. But the life is using that person to express through, enable it to shape and form, think, feel, touch, smell, and do all these things. The wondrous capacity of reasoning and function is that life essence that's living and expressing through you as you. As you. So you must be that life essence. And we belittle ourselves and take ourselves to be the person. Put the label of doubt, limiting factor on yourself. So go to back to that. I am that. Absolute. I am that. Absolute. Absolute.